welcome. We're all really excited to take you through one of our newer services, InterSystems Data Fabric Studio. And the reason that this is so exciting for us is that with this service, it brings the core underlying data management capabilities that I'm sure most, if not all of you are familiar with, to a wider range of users and personas in the organization. So not just your technical database developers and your application developers, for sure they can use it as well, but with Data Fabric Studio, it democratizes access to our data management capabilities. So it's very exciting, and thank you all for joining. So I'm Joe Lichtenberg. I'm responsible for product and industry marketing globally. And with me today to take you through a technical demo are my friends.
I'm Stella Chen. I'm one of the developers on the IDFS team.
And I'm Ebtihal, and I'm also a lead developer. We're excited to show you what we've built for InterSystems Data Fabric Studio today.
Perfect. Okay, so a little bit of the agenda. First, I'll take you through sort of the what and why. What is Data Fabric Studio? Why did we build it? And then Stella and Ebtihal will take you through a live demo. So we like to sort of preface that as a live demo. We're connected to the internet. I'm sure everything is going to go perfectly well. But just in case, we are taking you through a live demo. And then I will take some time and talk through some of the questions that we tend to get when people see the service. A big one is around how it fits in our product portfolio, how it compares to what you have with InterSystems IRIS and IRIS for Health and so forth. I'll talk about our packaging strategy. So it's a modular approach where you have a base service and you can mix and match modules. And then finally, what I'd like to do is take you through how one of our customers is using this service. It's a good example of the sort of value and benefits that this can bring to the organization. Okay? Okay, so what is it? InterSystems Data Fabric Studio, what we tend to call IDFS for short, and we may be calling it IDFS over the next 45 minutes or so. It's a fully managed cloud-native solution. It's built on InterSystems IRIS, so it leverages all of the power and functionality, scalability and resource efficiency of InterSystems IRIS. But again, it makes it faster and easier to use all of your data inside the organization and outside the organization. The reason that we built it is so that a wider range of users can gain value from their data. Again, leveraging all the power of InterSystems IRIS and a smart data fabric architecture. So can developers still use it? Application developers, database developers? Absolutely, they can still use it. But now more personas and people in the organization like data stewards and integration engineers and business analysts and others have the ability now to leverage the power of InterSystems technology. And I'm just curious, a show of hands, how many people in the audience are sort of core application developers, database developers writing code? Okay, and so the process of elimination, I take the other half are not, and so that's about right, that's what we see. So about half of you would be good personas for InterSystems IRIS and our core data management technologies, but all of you could be able to use Data Fabric Studio. So what problems is it built to solve? So it's built to solve the data problem. So good data, as we know, is critical, right? For all sorts of initiatives and innovation and addressing challenges throughout the organization, right? Having good data really is critical for using it as a springboard for many different types of innovative products and services. And we know that the data problem is still pervasive in really every industry. right? We heard this morning about how good data is required for Gen AI to reduce hallucinations. And if you were in the keynote this morning, they were talking about where Gen AI initiatives and AI initiatives worked really well was where you had all of the data in one locale, in one silo, in one location, right? It starts to get really challenging when you have data spread disparately inside and outside the organization, and you want to pull that together for predictive analytics, for Gen AI, and so forth. And it's interesting, this is recent survey data from Gartner. They found that only 4% of respondents said their data is ready for AI. So it's still a pervasive problem. What about digital transformation? So with the exception of budget constraints, the top challenges and blockers around digital transformation, around data integration challenges, and having legacy siloed systems. What about decision intelligence? This is a recent survey that we just ran with more than 100 different organizations. And decision intelligence are the predictive models, the prescriptive models. It's the models that the data scientists and the quants are building. What are the top barriers to improving the performance of their analytical models? Surprisingly, it's not the models themselves. It's the data. These are the top barriers, according to the survey. Data availability, needing new data sources. So being able to pull in data from multiple different sources into your decision intelligence models. Data latency and timing, having current, fresh data. Data quality, data consistency. Again, bringing in data from multiple sources, getting it into a consistent format. Interestingly, they said they're current data platforms. So if you think about, there's data warehouses, cloud data warehouses, data marts, data lakes, data lake houses. They all are really valuable for what they do, but there are still challenges associated with bringing in data and using it for analytics, even with the advent and the adoption of all of those platforms. Okay, so I think at this point, most, if not all of you have seen this slide. This is our architectural approach to data management, and it's based on a data fabric architecture, what we call a smart data fabric architecture. And it's complementary to everything that you already have running in the organization. Not only your data sources and your application silos, but also your data management silos that you already have running in the organization. So if you're running data warehouses and data marts and data lakes and data lake houses, all of those systems and the data in them can be used as inputs into a data fabric architecture where you get a single source of truth that can be used by all of the users, all the data users, whether those are business users, whether those are applications, whether those are the models that your data scientists are running. You want to have a single source of truth that everybody in the organization is pulling their data from, so that you have consistency and you start to eliminate those errors by having different data silos. And so all of our products, all of the products and services that we offer are based on a smart data fabric architectural approach. And so, of course, Data Fabric Studio is no different. Okay, so in just a minute, we're going to take you through a live demo, but this is a sort of an architectural overview of the service itself. And so what we've done is we've created low-code data workflows that make it easy for more people in the organization, not by writing code, but by navigating configuration screens, as you will see, to be able to connect to all of your data sources inside and outside the organization, integrate, transform, reconcile, validate the data coming in, getting it into a consistent format, persisting it, and then using it for a wide variety of use cases. Okay, so with that, I'd like to turn it over to my friends Stella and Ebtihal to take you through a live demo.
Thank you, Joe, for that intro. I've been told I don't have the most booming voice, so if anyone can't hear me, just give a shout.
Okay, yes. So to recap,
In this diagram above, you can see on the left-hand side, those are the data sources. That's where we'll be wanting to pull in data from. And on the right-hand side, those are systems or applications that we'll be wanting to use that data. In the middle, that's where InterSystems Data Fabric Studio or IDFS lives. And IDFS has all of these capabilities to connect out to those data sources, pull that data in so that you can control it, persist it, and then use it either with features within the application itself or by connecting out to external applications or systems. So the first step in the workflow of IDFS is to connect out to those data sources and to introspect what is in those data sources and turn that into schemas. So when I talk about connecting out to different data sources, that can be connecting to databases, or that can be connecting to an S3 bucket in an AWS. We also support connecting to message streaming platforms like Kafka. We've also built custom stuff for things like Snowflake, and I'll be showing all of you these things later in the demo. So on the left-hand side, you can see those technical connectors. Those are things that we have in IDFS today. On the right-hand side, under connectivity, that's sources that we've established connectivity to in the past and have been able to pull in data from. So in essence, we offer connectors out of the box for users to use right away, but we also have the ability to build custom connectors to allow you to connect to any type of data or application source inside or outside of the application. So with that being said, I will bring you over to IDFS. So this is IDFS. On the left-hand side, you can see all these features or categories. So things like visualizing your data, some assistants will be talking about later. And Ebtihal and I will be going through and showing you a little bit about each of these features. So first, I'm just gonna walk you over to the Manage module. And under here, one of the sub-menu items is data sources. So as I've mentioned, these are the connectors that we offer out of the box. I'll just be walking you through one as an example. So this is an S3 delimited data source that we've pre-configured. And for each different type of data source, the information that you need to fill in here will be a little bit different depending on what IDFS really needs to establish that connection. So you can imagine for connecting to an AWS S3 bucket, it might make sense to provide the bucket name, the AWS session token, things of that nature. For JDBC sources or file directory sources, this form will look a little bit different because IDFS needs different information. So speaking of file sources, we have this module called the File Manager, and this is where you can upload different files, CSV files or Excel files. You can just give IDFS a little snippet of your data, and then from there we'll be able to introspect and create a schema definition based off of what that CSV file or Excel file looks like. As I've previously mentioned, IDFS has the ability to connect to message streaming platforms like Kafka, for example. And this differs a little bit from the previous data sources that I've mentioned in the sense that Kafka can obviously be constantly pushing out messages. So IDFS gives you the ability to control, do I want to be consuming those messages right now, yes or no? And then from there, we can persist that just like the other types of data. So from there, once you've established those connections to those different data sources, you'll go on over to our data catalog module. And just as an example, I will walk you through one of the schema definitions that we have configured. So this is a schema definition that was generated from connecting to a Snowflake data source and then choosing one of the tables there. So these first few columns, those are coming straight from that Snowflake table. And as I previously mentioned, we did build something custom for Snowflake, a custom extraction strategy called change data capture. And that's what these three columns are for. So this allows you to just pull out the differential from what's last been loaded from this table into IDFS and just figure out what the new data is and pull that through. And I just want to highlight that IDFS really makes this process simple because once you connect to that Snowflake source and you select which table you want, we automatically generate the schema definition using what's in that table. So we give you the names of those fields, the types of those fields, things of that nature. So you don't have to go through and manually say like what columns are in this table, things like that. So from there, I'll hand it over to Ebtihal to walk you through the next step.
Okay, so the next step we have is actually controlling your data. So after you configure the data sources like Stella mentioned, and you catalog the schemas that you want to load, now you can actually build a data workflow to load the data from these sources and import it into IRIS. You can validate your data and transform it as you're loading it. And if you have the data stored in multiple data sources, you can reconcile the data as you're loading it. And the final step is to promote all this data to the final target tables. That's what the customers will query and use for their purposes. We also wanted to automate the whole process. So instead of you having to manually run these jobs every day, we can set up a schedule for you to like run your loads every single day. So now I'll go back to our live demo to walk you through an example of how you can set up a data workflow. So this is the page where you can configure your data workflows or recipes as we call them in IDFS. And this is an example of a data workflow. We actually have multiple steps as you can see on the screen, and they are run in the same order as you can see here. So the first step is always staging. Staging is when you actually connect to the external data source and pull the data from there into IRIS. As an example here, we have the IRIS data store, FSA Analytics data source, and you can see once you select that data source, you will see all the schemas that you have cataloged from there. And let's say we selected just this one table to load, you'll see the list of fields, and you can select which specific ones you want to load. So after staging, we have transformation. So transformation is when you can convert some of the data as you're loading it. I will walk you through an example here too. So we offer a simple list of transformation functions that you can choose from. Some of the easy ones are you can convert everything to lowercase or uppercase, or you can trim the extra white space if you need. But if you wanted to come up with something that's more complex, we also offer a way for you to use a custom SQL expression to apply your transformation rule. And then similarly, we have validation. So you want to validate your data as you're bringing it in. And we, again, offer some functions that will help you do that. Some of the simple examples, we have a not null function here. So you can validate that a specific column doesn't have any null values. Another simple one is fixed numeric range. So for your numeric fields, you can validate that your values fall within a specific range using minimum or maximum values here. But again, if you wanted something more complex, you can set up a custom SQL expression to do that for you. Next step is reconciliation. So as I mentioned before, sometimes you'll have data coming in from multiple sources, and you can compare these two sources and reconcile them as you're loading the data. You can see here we have a primary source and a secondary source. So what we do is we try to auto-match the fields as you're loading the data. You can see the list of primary fields here and the secondary fields that were matched to them. And we basically try to compare the values as you bring them in and make sure that they have the same values. And the final step is promotion. So now that you've validated your data and you have transformed it as needed, you can finally take all that data and insert it into the final data models. So all you need to provide is an insert or an update SQL expression that will be run. Okay, so now that you have configured the data workflow, how do you actually run that or set up a schedule to run it for you? So the next concept we'll talk about is business calendars. So before you can actually set up the schedule, you can pick what calendar you want to use. So we offer a list of calendars. You can add your own calendars if you want. It can be a specific region, an industry, or your organization's calendar. As an example here for the financial industry, we have the London Stock Exchange, and you can see we also have the New York Stock Exchange. And if I filter by this year, you'll see this is the list of holidays that we have. And why is this important? Because if you have a schedule to run on every business day, for example, if it falls on a holiday, we can skip that load for you. And it's also important because you can see that we have a time zone. So if you want a task to run at 9 a.m., for example, we need to know what time zone you're running it in, and that's provided here. Some other fields that are important is like when your fiscal year starts or ends, and when your business week starts and ends. So we know like when, like if you schedule to run on a business day, this is important for our scheduling capabilities. Okay, so now we'll go to the business scheduler, and this is where you can actually configure your data workflows to run on a schedule using the appropriate calendar. So you can see here that sometimes we have tasks grouped together. If the tasks are related to one another or maybe dependent on one another, it makes sense to put them in a group. And as an example, we have the financial news data group here. So this consists of 5 different tasks that will load data from 5 different news sources. And just to walk you through the schedule, you can see here that we have decided to run this group every day. This can be something different. You can decide to run it on just business days. It can be the first business day of the fiscal year or last business day of the fiscal year. And there are a lot of other options that you can choose from. You can also decide what to do on holidays. That's why we mentioned the holiday calendar earlier. For this example, we are running it anyway. And finally, you can decide the start time. So what happens here is that every day at 9 a.m., this group will kick off and all the tasks within that group will start running at the same time. But another concept we have is dependencies. So if you don't want all the tasks to run at the same time, if your job waits for another task to complete first before it can start running, maybe you're waiting for a different set of data to be loaded first before you can load this data, you can set up a dependency here. So you can decide that you want to run after and then select a different task that you are waiting for, and your task will only start running after this other task completes. Okay, and another thing is that you don't have to actually like sit there and actively monitor your jobs and the status of them, because you can set up a list of emails here that will be notified if anything goes wrong in one of your runs. And then if there's any manual intervention needed, you can fix the issue and decide to retry the job or abort it. So that's for configuring how the task runs. And then I just wanted to highlight that we also store the full history of previous runs for our tasks. And this is really useful for auditing reasons. You can see what time the job started running, how long it took, and we also offer a visual trace here where you can see a more detailed view of your run. So you can see all the requests, responses, and any exceptions there with details. So that's everything for the business scheduler. Now I'll go back to the management module that Stella showed earlier to talk about the security and permissioning in our application. So a lot of times customers will create different roles for users to access different parts of the applications, and they want to limit what they can see. So as an example here, I have selected our AI access role, and you can see that it does not have access to most parts of the application, like the business scheduler or the data catalog. But if we keep scrolling, you see that we have access to the research assistant that Stella will show later. So you can view it and you can ask this AI assistant any questions that you want. So this is a good way to limit what specific users can access. You can also do something similar with your data. So you can limit the data that users or roles can access. So here you can see this is the list of schemas that this specific role has access to. And you can do something similar with the other tabs like tables, views, procedures, and capabilities. Okay, and the other management page that we want to show is the configuration management. This takes a minute to load because it gets a list of all the configurations that we have created in this environment. So soon you'll see here the list of data schema definitions, data workflows, and any task from the business scheduler. And what you can do here is take all these configurations, extract them, and promote them to a different environment. So for example, if a customer has different environments, they can set their configurations up in the dev environment, and then take everything, export it, and then import in the next environment. So here's the list. As you can see, you have a lot of different configurations. So if you wanted to limit what you want to export, let's say you only want to export data schema definitions, you can filter here and only export that in the list and import it into your next environment. This is useful because you don't have to waste all that time configuring everything from scratch in these different environments. Okay, and now we'll take it back to the slides to talk about the next step. So now after control, we have persist. All this data that we're pulling from these data sources will persist in IRIS. We store all the historical runs, so you can access data from previous loads if needed. You can take snapshots of your data at any point in time, and we'll persist that data in snapshot tables in IRIS. And finally, you can also build a semantic layer using adaptive analytics. So you can create multiple virtual data models on top of your data without creating different copies. And this allows you to use different terminology for these data models as you serve different use cases. And then this doesn't affect the data underneath. So everybody using these data models will be accessing the same data, the same underlying data. So this eliminates any errors or discrepancies that would happen if you were looking at different copies of the data. And now I'll go back to the demo just to show you how we can set up a snapshot. So the snapshot is a feature that allows you to capture what the data looks like at a specific point in time. All you have to provide is a SQL statement here. So this is a select statement that will take your data from the table that you would take a snapshot of. It will take that data and persist it into a snapshot table in IRIS. An important feature here is the tag. So this is the default tag, but every time you run a snapshot, you can change this tag. And this is useful if you wanted to filter just the data from a specific previous snapshot run. You can just filter by this tag. And I just wanted to highlight that we can schedule snapshots to run on a schedule, again, using the business scheduler. So what we did for data workflows earlier, the same thing can happen with snapshots. So for example, if you wanted something to run at the end of each month and take a snapshot of a specific table, that can be set up in the business scheduler that I showed earlier. Okay, and now we'll take it back to Stella so she can talk about how we can use this data.
Okay, yeah. So we've walked you through all of the capabilities in IDFS to connect out to different data sources, control and persist that data, and now it's finally time to make the most of that data with use. When we talk about use, the beauty of IDFS is that it can serve as your single source of truth. We've done all the work to aggregate the data that you need, and from there we support almost any way that you want to be able to leverage that data. So I'll just be walking through some popular use cases for brevity. So the first instance is direct exploration. And a few examples of this is just connecting out to different tools of your choice. So for example, if you want to run a visualization on your data, you can connect out to Tableau. If you want to run any calculations or analysis, you can connect to R or Strata. There's really a lot of flexibility here. The next thing is different systems. So IDFS supports being able to connect out to any external system. So a few examples are like if you need reporting or auditing done, you connect to those systems. If you need to connect out to any sort of customer systems, that's also possible. Lastly, I want to talk a little bit about assistance. So in a moment, I'll be showing a demo of a couple of the assistants in IDFS, but just for context, this is our assistant framework. So you have all of the data pulled into IDFS, but in order to be able to use it with generative AI applications, you still need to translate it into a format that they can use. So what our assistant framework does is it creates textual vectors from that data that you've loaded into the tables in IRIS. So then you can communicate with our assistants with prompts conversationally, and it will generate concise answers for you. So I'll just walk over to IDFS to show you this in action. I just want to highlight that everything that we've shown up to this point are features that are already in the application. The assistants that we're about to show you are features that we're planning to roll out in the near future. Oh, and one last note, if you are interested in this section of our application, there will be a more deep dive into the Gen AI side of IDFS on Wednesday, so look out for that. So yeah, back to IDFS. This is the SQL Assistant. So on the left-hand side, you can see probably a view that a lot of you guys are familiar with. It's just a SQL Explorer, so you can just enter any query into here and then run it. But then on the right-hand side, there's a SQL Assistant panel. So you can communicate with it conversationally, give me the trades for a customer named Goldman Sachs, and it will try to generate a SQL query that's appropriate for what you've asked it. And this is really useful for people who maybe aren't super familiar with query language, or if they just want some help constructing a more complex query. So you can see here we've asked for a few refinements, and the SQL Assistant continues to help you make adjustments to that query as needed. And then finally, when you're happy with that query, we have a couple of useful functions here attached to each SQL statement snippet. So we have the copy button. You can copy it to your clipboard and then paste it in here and run it if you want, or copy it somewhere else. Or you can click the run button as I just have, and it will just directly paste it for you, and you can see your results right here. And then lastly, I want to show you guys the Research Assistant. So the SQL Assistant is really to use to help you generate those SQL queries, as I've mentioned. But your Research Assistant has access to a bunch of different agents, news agents, graphing agents, also the data catalog agent. So you can ask it prompts based on any of the data that you have loaded into IDFS. So for example, we've asked it to summarize something that happened recently with Tesla, NVIDIA, and Apple, and it's generating a concise answer for you. It's even finding you some articles that might be helpful or relevant to your prompt. And then at the bottom, you can see this trace. It was also over on the SQL Assistant. And this is really useful for seeing which parts of your prompt are costing and which parts are taking a long time. And useful information for you to debug any prompts that you've asked any of our assistants. So with that being said, I'm just going to go back to the presentation to give you a little snippet of what we have planned for the future. So as I've mentioned, the assistants are features that we plan to roll out soon, but we want to expand on the assistant framework as well. So imagine being able to ask an assistant, make me a snapshot or make me a recipe, and it just does all of that work for you. That's one of the directions that we want to go with the assistant. And then also, compute is another feature that we want to add to IDFS. So if you have any computationally complex script or programs that you want to run, you will be able to use our compute feature. And we will be able to scale that up, run those computations, either return that data to you or persist it, and then scale back down. So that's pretty much all we wanted to show you in the demo, and we'll hand it back to Joe to wrap it up.
Awesome. Thank you both for that awesome demo. Especially, I love all of it, but especially the Gen AI vector-based assistance. Really cool. Okay, so one of the things that I wanted to talk about that I hear a lot is people want to understand where Data Fabric Studio fits in our product portfolio. And one of the questions that we get a lot is how is it different or similar to InterSystems IRIS? So as I think everybody knows, IRIS is our core data management platform. Data Fabric Studio is built on top of IRIS, so it inherits the features and the architecture and the robustness, the scalability, the resource efficiency, security, governance, all of that from IRIS, but it's built on top of IRIS. IRIS is designed for developers to build applications, to code applications. It's for application developers, database developers. As you saw, Data Fabric Studio is designed for a wider range of users to configure solutions through these configuration screens. again, if you're an application developer or a database developer, can you still use Data Fabric Studio? Absolutely. But it's really designed so that a wider range of users can gain the benefits of working with our data management technology. With IRIS, really you can build anything, and our thousands of customers are really a testament to that. There's mission critical, operational, transactional applications, there's analytical applications, there's integration type applications, there's real-time transactional analytic applications where you're processing massive incoming streaming data at scale and running analytics on it. You really build anything on top of IRIS. With Data Fabric Studio, it's really built for being able to, as you saw, integrate data from a lot of different sources, get it into a consistent format, and then the use features. So that may be promoting to a consuming application, right? Bringing the data from many different sources, getting it into a consistent format, and then promoting it to your supply chain planning application or your risk application or something like that. And for analytical use cases, especially now with the Gen AI functionality that we're putting into the product. Both IRIS and Data Fabric Studio are applicable to any industry. And so you can take IRIS and use it in any industry. Also, we have InterSystems IRIS for health. We have Supply Chain Orchestrator, which are different flavors of IRIS. The base Data Fabric Studio you can use in any industry. So everybody in this room, no matter what industry you're in, you can use Data Fabric Studio. And in a moment, I'll talk to you about some of the extensions that we have that are specific to certain industries. Another difference is that with IRIS, it's really deployment agnostic. So you can run it on-prem, you can run it in private cloud, public cloud, you can run it in hybrid deployments, on-prem cloud. With Data Fabric Studio, currently it runs only in the cloud, and it's a fully managed service. And what the little asterisk means is, when I said currently, that is the deployment option for now. But as with everything that we do, if enough customers ask us to go in a certain direction, we can have that conversation as well. So a little bit about packaging. Again, I talked about this a little bit. Data Fabric Studio is the base service. So if you're going to use Data Fabric Studio, everybody's going to start with the base service. And that might be sufficient, right? But depending on the industry that you're in or additional functionality, you might want to add modules. And it's modular in that you can mix and match modules just to get the functionality that you need. So again, base service, Data Fabric Studio, might be all that you need. The industry-specific modules, we have one for supply chain, and I'll talk about that, one for financial services asset management, and also healthcare, or the health module that will be rolling out shortly. Everything else is released. And then we also have functional modules. So we have the adaptive analytics module. If you're familiar with what we've done with IRIS, with the at-scale implementation for the semantic layer, you saw that in the demo. That's an optional module. That's the adaptive analytics module. And then the assistance, which will be rolling out shortly. And you can see the release, the not yet released. And so the health module soon to be released, the assistant module soon to be released. And then, of course, over time, we'll be rolling out additional modules to flesh out the capabilities, both for different industries and for functional capabilities. So, again, the base service, you saw this. You add in the asset management module, it adds connectors to financial services, asset management, specific data sources and applications, pre-built connectivity. It has workflow logic for the asset management space, an asset management data model that comes pre-packaged, and reports and report templates for the asset management space. And you can see in green how adding the module adds functionality to these different parts of the application, these different services within the application. The same is true with the supply chain module, and then the same is true for the healthcare module. And you can see the data sources on the left change, and some of the data users on the right-hand side change as well. Okay, and again, it's modular, it's meant to mix and match, just the functionality that you need, you can add initially or over time. So I wanted to talk to you about one of our customers that has been using Data Fabric Studio, because I think it's a really good description of the value and the benefits that you can get from using this service. So this is a customer, Harris Associates. They're an asset management firm. They also own and operate a mutual fund in the financial services space. So they had a number of challenges and initiatives that they were looking to accomplish. The first was, like every customer in every industry that we work with, it was massively siloed, and there was a lot of manual data management processing. So in the asset management space, you have the front, the middle, and the back office. They have their own data silos. They have their own applications, third-party applications and homegrown applications that service different areas in the front office, the middle office, the back office. Then they have real-time market streaming data that's coming in. They have data from custodians coming in at the end of the day on the back end. So it's very siloed. And so there was a lot of manual processing, number one. And they also had these different data management silos, different data marts for customer reporting and for regulatory reporting. So they wanted to automate those manual processes, have a single source of truth, so that all of the different constituents inside and outside the organization were all running from the same source of truth. So that's exactly what they did. They automated all of these workflows and processes with Data Fabric Studio, and they had all sorts of sort of operational benefits. And one story that they told us is the end of month reporting that they have to do every month. They had 4 people working full-time for 2 weeks at the end of every month just to prepare those end of month reports. Now it's all automated. So you saw that with the workflows and the schedule, it's all automated. So they could redeploy those 4 people to higher value tasks. But in addition, rather than waiting till the end of the month, at any point during any trading day, they could drill into that data and get real-time data and real-time intelligence instead of waiting until the end of the month. So there's all of those benefits. But what I actually think is even more interesting is that they then use that data in the Data Fabric and Data Fabric Studio as a springboard for innovation. And they started creating all these new internally facing and externally facing innovative services that they said to us either would have taken them a really long time to build and implement, or in some cases they would not even have attempted to build them at all. So some of the services that they've rolled out recently, they have a new investment risk analytics platform for looking at the risk associated with portfolios and for making potential changes to the portfolio that they didn't have previously. In the asset management space, a lot of the client reporting is the same, regardless of which asset management firm you're working with, right? It's sort of standardized. They saw an opportunity to differentiate by having an innovative client-facing reporting application so that they could differentiate from their competition, and that's exactly what they did. They launched a new exchange-traded fund. So they take 1% of assets under management as revenue. So if they can create new funds and get net new revenue coming in, it increases their revenue coming in, their profitability. They modernized an existing trade cost analysis application. What's interesting about TCA is, I don't know if anybody here is familiar with it, but what they do is they take all of the trades historically that they've ever done, right? And then they want to match that to every equivalent trade that happened historically across the entire market. So it requires massive amounts of streaming data coming in, historical streaming data, so that they can track how their trade execution performed relative to all of the other equivalent trades in the market. So it's a high scalability historical analytics application. So they did that. And then just in general, it allows them to respond better, more accurately, and more timely to client requests that come in. And for new business, RFPs and RFIs, where again, as they get more business, it's more assets under management, they charge 1%, right? And so that increases their revenue. So all these new innovative services that they built on top of Data Fabric Studio and the single source of truth. And I want to finish with a quote from our champion at Harris. So he worked very closely with us and our development team in implementing all of these services. And he's been around for a long time. He's worked with data warehouses, data lakes, integration platforms, et cetera, et cetera. And this is his quote. He said to us, "We've been working with technology for a long time. We finally found something that works." So thank you all very much for attending and for your attention. I'd recommend these sessions as well if you're interested. So we have today at 4:30 in this room, supply chain, and a part of that will be Data Fabric Studio with the supply chain module. At 5:30 in the Tech Exchange, there's demos of Data Fabric Studio with the supply chain module. And then Wednesday at 1, all of the generative AI capabilities, there's a full session on that we demoed with Amir and his team. I highly recommend that. And then the soon-to-be released health module, Data Fabric Studio with the health module, is Wednesday at 2 o'clock. So again, thank you. We're here for questions if anybody has any questions for the next few minutes. Anybody have any questions? Okay, thank you all. Thanks for coming.